The TurboGrafx 16 might look cute and colourful, but don't let that fool you. Beneath the bright pixels and old-school charm were games soaked in blood, guts, and pure nightmare fuel. From haunted mansions to demon pinball tables, these titles didn't hold back. So grab your controller, dim the lights, and let's dive into the top 10 ultra-violent TurboGrafx 16 games that went too far. Splatterhouse. Let's kick things off with the big one. Splatterhouse. If the hockey mask didn't give it away, this was TurboGrafx answer to a horror movie marathon gone wild. You play as Rick, a guy who wakes up in a mansion filled with demons after being possessed by a mask that looks suspiciously like Jason Voorhees' twin. The game's goal? Punch, kick, and chainsaw your way through a parade of mutant freaks. What made Splatterhouse so violent wasn't just the gallons of pixelated blood, but the disturbing creature design. Monsters that oozed, screamed, and exploded when you smashed them. It even had crucified corpses in the background, which was enough to make some retailers nervous. Despite the gore, the gameplay was straightforward fun, side-scrolling, brawling with a satisfying crunch to every hit. The only downside? It's a bit short, but hey, good horror doesn't need to overstay its welcome. Dead of the Brain. If Splatterhouse was a slasher flick, Dead of the Brain was a full-blown zombie movie. Released in Japan only, this interactive horror adventure told the story of two scientists who accidentally unleash a zombie apocalypse. Because of course they do. The game was part visual novel, part point and click, with gruesome death scenes that looked like they were pulled straight from an 80s VHS tape. What made it notorious was the sheer amount of graphic detail. Heads exploded, intestines spilled, and the game didn't shy away from showing you every bit of it. It was like playing through Reanimator or Return of the Living Dead, except you had to read your way through the carnage. The writing was surprisingly solid for a game this over-the-top, though the pacing could drag. Still, it's one of those underground horror gems that proves Japanese developers weren't afraid to go all out. War of the Dead, Shiryo Sensen. Before survival horror became a thing, War of the Dead was already testing the waters. You play as Lila, a soldier sent to a cursed island where demons, zombies, and other abominations roam freely. The game mixes RPG exploration with real-time combat, which was ambitious for its time and terrifying. The violence wasn't just about gore, it was about atmosphere. Every encounter felt like a desperate fight for survival, with haunting music and eerie sound effects that kept you on edge. The sprites may look dated now, but for 1989, they were disturbingly detailed. Some players found the difficulty brutal, but that only added to the tension. Think of it as the creepy ancestor of Resident Evil. Smaller screen, same amount of dread. Castlevania Dracula X, Rondo of Blood. Now this one's legendary. Rondo of Blood wasn't just one of the best looking games on the PC Engine, it was also one of the bloodiest Castlevania entries at the time. You play as Richter Belmont, cracking your whip through gothic castles filled with blood-drinking demons and monsters that look like they crawled out of a nightmare. The violence here was stylish, crimson splashes, impaled corpses, and burning villages. It set the tone for what would later evolve into Symphony of the Night. The soundtrack still slaps, and the animations are buttery smooth. The only bad thing, Western players had to wait years before it even came out outside Japan. Back then, Rondo of Blood was the forbidden fruit of vampire gaming. Devil's Crush. How do you make pinball violent? You add demons, pentagrams, and screaming skulls. That's how. Devil's Crush turned pinball into a satanic ritual, with a table designed like a demonic altar filled with creepy imagery and animated monsters. Every time you hit the right spot, the table bled, burned, or summoned something that should probably stay in hell. It caused a stir for its occult visuals, especially in the US, where religious imagery didn't go over well. But controversy aside, it's one of the best pinball games ever made. Fast-paced, responsive, and weirdly addictive. The graphics still hold up, and the soundtrack, chef's kiss. The only bad thing was that it ended too soon. It's like hell's version of pinball. Once you start, you can't stop. Samurai Ghost, Genpei Tomaden 2. If you've ever wondered what it's like to be a dead samurai slicing your way through demons, Samurai Ghost has you covered. You play as Terra no Kagakyo, a resurrected warrior out for revenge in a nightmare version of feudal Japan. The whole game looks like it was drawn with blood and fire, full of ghosts, decapitations, and creepy Japanese folklore monsters. The backgrounds are filled with eerie temples, haunted battlefields, and misty mountains that make you feel like you've stepped into a dark legend. The music has that haunting traditional Japanese sound mixed with heavy percussion. Combat was smooth, but man, the game was tough. Enemies hit hard, and bosses could wipe you out in seconds if you weren't careful. The violence wasn't just in the visuals. The gameplay itself punished you hard. You'd lose progress, lives, and sometimes your sanity. Still, when you managed to beat a monstrous Tengu or slice through a wave of vengeful spirits, the payoff was huge. The violence served a purpose. It made you feel the rage and desperation of a fallen warrior. Even with its harsh learning curve, Samurai Ghost stood out as one of the most atmospheric and visually stunning games on the system. Hellfire S CD. Hellfire S was a side-scrolling shooter that brought chaos and destruction to outer space. You control a ship with multiple firing directions, and your mission is basically to wipe out everything that moves. Unlike its Genesis counterpart, the PC Engine version amped up the visuals, explosions, and speed to 11. The sprites were crisp, and every shot felt powerful, with lasers tearing across the screen like lightning bolts. The scrolling backgrounds showed massive planets, space debris, and alien armadas, giving every level a sense of scale that made you feel tiny but dangerous. The violence here wasn't about gore, but sheer scale. Enemies exploding in fiery bursts, mechanical beasts tearing apart, and a sense of endless destruction. The soundtrack was metal as hell, and every stage looked like a cosmic war zone. The boss fights were pure adrenaline. The downside? It's insanely difficult. Blink and you're dead. Enemies come from all sides, and your reflexes need to be sharp to survive even a few minutes. But that challenge is exactly why fans still talk about it. It's punishing, but when you finally master the weapon switching system and clear a stage, you feel like a space god. Night Creatures. Night Creatures feels like it came straight out of a 90s horror VHS collection. You play as a cursed man fighting his way through forests, graveyards, and creepy castles filled with beasts and monsters. It's dark, moody, and loaded with atmosphere, with levels that feel like each one could have its own campy horror title card. The backdrops are filled with foggy moonlight, flickering torches, and writhing shadows that move just enough to make you paranoid. The violence is more gothic than gory. Bats explode, skeletons crumble, and the screen constantly drips with macabre energy. The main character's attacks send blood-red flashes across the screen, and every defeated monster bursts into fragments of bone or slime. The game tries hard to scare, even though the controls feel a bit stiff. The pacing can be slow, but it adds to the suspense. It's rough around the edges, but the spooky soundtrack and eerie art direction make it worth checking out. Alien Crush. Before Devil's Crush, there was Alien Crush. Imagine playing pinball inside an alien hive, surrounded by pulsating organic walls and grotesque creatures that react to every hit. The whole thing feels inspired by Alien and the Thing. Slimy, gross, and absolutely awesome. The table itself is alive with weird organic details, veins pulse, eyes blink, and tiny alien hands. The violence comes from how alive the board feels. Everything breathes, squirms or screams when you hit it. Hitting the right targets makes monsters burst apart, acid spills, and slime flies everywhere in satisfying bursts of digital chaos. The game has that perfect mix of sci-fi horror and arcade fun, blending fast-paced pinball action with genuinely creepy moments. The only drawback is that it's a bit limited compared to its sequel, but it still laid the foundation for one of the coolest and most memorable pinball horror experiences ever made. Ghost Manor. Ghost Manor is one of those games that looks silly until it isn't. You play as a hero venturing into a haunted mansion to rescue your girlfriend from an evil vampire. Classic premise, right? But the game surprised players with its spooky visuals, creepy monsters, and surprisingly violent animations for a 90s title. The mansion itself feels alive, with flickering lights, cobwebbed halls, creaking doors, and secret passages that keep you on edge. Each room has its own set of horrors, from animated suits of armour to floating skulls that lunge at you with perfect timing. It's not as gory as Splatterhouse, but it's got charm. Skeletons explode, ghouls jump scare you, and the eerie sound design makes it a fun haunted house ride. The controls can be clunky, but that's part of its old school charm. The level design encourages exploration and experimentation, rewarding careful players with hidden treasures and secret paths. Between the visual details, clever scares, and quirky enemy designs, it's one of those forgotten gems that perfectly wraps up the TurboGrafx weird obsession with horror. Marvellous verdict! And there you have it, 10 games that proved the TurboGrafx 16 wasn't afraid to get messy. From zombie labs to demonic pinball tables, this little console had some seriously wild moments. Which of these games shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more retro horror deep dives. Until next time, keep it creepy.